Alright, so we're back, of course, to talk about some remake, but kind of FF7 as a whole. It's a discussion I've been wanting to get to for about a week or so now. And it's about like the localization, the translations and stuff when it comes to like English versus like Japanese when it comes to remaking kind of FF7 in general. I've been wanting to talk about it for a bit, but then I seen some more shit today because apparently, so Trace 2 Pass is coming out in like a week or so, somewhere like I think March 21st. And people are getting like early copies of it, but apparently like in the English version of the book, like they gave Tifa's cat a completely different name. Like the cat's name is Manu, Manu, but apparently in like the English version of the book, Tifa's cat's name is Fluffy. Like what does that change? Like what is the point of that? But there's also apparently like a lot more differences and stuff in the book. People are kind of tearing apart over on Twitter and stuff. I've seen people talking about like the promise scene, like the well scene between Tifa and Cloud and stuff. In the book, they use the description of like love in the scene in like the Japanese version of the book. But in the English version of the book, in the parts where they use the word love, it's like changed to like. And it's like those are similar enough, I suppose, but there's definitely different connotations between liking somebody and loving somebody, fucking obviously. And it was like I could go on and on with examples out there that are from Trace 2 Past. But anyways, like localization, mistranslations, this has been a problem plaguing FF7 since the original, right? That's one of the biggest like talking points in some ways for OG FF7 is just some of the weird, awkward mistranslations. We're not just talking about like errors like this guy are sick or whatever. Just though there are plenty of those and stuff like, you know, Barrett telling you to attack when the Scorpion Sentinel's tail's up, things like that. But when it comes to FF7 original, there's just bad translations across the board from dialogue to mistranslated like character names and enemy names. Like, for example, there's the Harpy, and if you look at this thing, that's clearly not what a fucking Harpy looks like. That's meant to be a Chimera. Now, when it comes to remake, there is quite a bit of like translation differences, and this varies kind of across the board. Just sort of depending on which language you're looking at the game at, whether that's the OG original Japanese, of course, or like the English translation, German, French, stuff like that, right? There's just different dialogue depending on which version of the game you're looking at. So an example that I can give is one that I learned about recently is at the end of the episode intermission, whenever you get the Zack scene, whenever he opens up the doors to go into the church, he obviously says, "I'm back." And apparently in the Japanese version of the game, whenever he's busting through the doors, he actually says, "I'm home." Like, those two lines have just completely different meanings, right? The fact that he would open up the doors to the Sector 5 church, thinking he's about to see Aerith, and saying, "I'm home." Like, to him, Aerith is home, right? Sector 5 church, Aerith, that is home to Zack. Means so much more than just opening up the doors and saying, "I'm back." Like, yeah, I know I've been away for like several years, and you sent a bunch of fucking letters that I've yet to respond to, but yeah, I'm back, what's up? That was just like really puzzling to me because it just changes the entire context of that scene, right? And I know Japanese is kind of hard to translate into English, of course, and like symbols or words in Japanese can like have multiple different meanings. And really, if you want to get like very super technical with it, like saying "I'm back" or "I'm home" can be relatively similar. But still, in that scene, right? For us in English, playing the game in English, hearing it in English, if Zack were to open up the doors and say "I'm home" versus "I'm back," that just means a hell of a lot more. Another one that I'm pretty aware of and have known, I think, since like 2020 or so is at the like very end of Remake, when Aerith looks up to the sky. In the English version, she says, "I miss it, the still sky." And I believe in Japanese, she just simply says, "I hate the sky." Now, if I remember correctly, the "I hate the sky" is a callback to something from the 30th anniversary exhibition for the Final Fantasy series like some years ago, I think 2018. Where they had like Aerith give a speech, and it's where you actually first heard the phrase or word "stamp" that we now know to be very common, obviously, when it comes to remake and stuff like that. But I believe in that speech, she actually says something along the lines of like hating the sky because it takes away the people that she loves, right? So like her saying, "I hate the sky" at the end of the game is kind of a callback to that, right? It's the reason she hates the sky. Versus the English version where she says, "I miss it, the still sky," which is like a very different thing. Now, it can kind of have a similar meaning in that, like, maybe she misses the still sky, like the Midgar plate or whatever above her when she's in the slums, because it would block the sky, which she hates, right? So, like, in a roundabout way, it could kind of sort of mean the same thing, but not really. And there's actually a plethora of these out there when it comes to remake, just sort of depending on what scene you're looking at and what language you're looking at. There's actually a change.org petition I'd seen on Twitter from a mutual follower. And nobody hit me up to like talk about this or discuss this or anything like that. This is just my own doing. I've seen this shit. I've seen that people were like very adamant about the English versus like other languages, specifically Japanese, of course. I feel like it's a pretty good discussion. But if you go over to the change.org petition, they actually link to kind of a file that has like a bunch of different translations and stuff like that. And there's just a handful here that are kind of interesting. Now, we're obviously not going to sit here and read all of these or whatever the case, but some of the standouts are like the alleyway scene with Sephiroth and Cloud, where Sephiroth says, "Can you bear to see the planet suffer, Cloud?" Whereas in the Japanese, he says, "Our planet is going to disappear, Cloud," which can have a somewhat similar meaning, of course, like some of these other ones we've talked about, but can also have a completely different connotation, just kind of depending on what Sephiroth means by that. But also in this case, I feel like I enjoy the English version of this one better. Also, apparently in German, he says, "You certainly don't want to stand around and do nothing, don't you?" It's like, fucking what, Sephiroth? Huh? Another pretty interesting one from that exact same scene is where Sephiroth says, "Hold on to that hatred," whereas in the Japanese, he actually says, "Don't forget me," which are both actually great lines. But the "Don't forget me" is more than likely a callback to On the Way to a Smile, Livestream Black, right? Where Sephiroth sort of like attaches himself to Cloud, and as long as Cloud remembers him, doesn't forget him, he can never like permanently die. And it might not be that at all. That's just a possibility, of course. Like, he could be speaking more literal, as in, "Don't forget me, don't forget what I did," because, of course, when he says, "Hold on to that hatred," Cloud attacked him for, like, talking about killing his mother and shit like that, right? So that could be what he means by "don't forget me." But at least there's a possibility they could have a deeper, like, meaning or whatever the case, even if it doesn't. And even just moving outside of Remake, because we could continue looking at this, like, file, there's actually the Rebirth trailer, something we talked about quite a bit, where in the English version, Cloud talks about remembering somebody, whatever the case, but in the Japanese version of the trailer, he straight up name drops the character of Zack.
You were here with me 5 years ago. Where are you?
5年前、俺たちは一緒にここに来たのか。ザックス、どこにいるんだ?
Now, obviously, these are just trailers, and there's a very distinct possibility that in the English version, whatever the scene is where Cloud's talking, he might say Zack's name, but then again, he might not, right? It depends on what they're trying to keep secretive or something with like Rebirth or whatever the case. But still, this is a very major difference, again, between English versus Japanese, right? Because Japanese fans heard him say Zack's name versus us English fans who didn't. Like, we had to learn from people that translated the trailer. And it seems like if you are a Japanese fan or somebody that speaks or understands Japanese, you just kind of get more from Remake as a whole. Like things are just explained better, scenes make more sense, you get more context for kind of what's going on with like the Remake story itself in general. It's just like frustrating, right? It's frustrating to be a fan of this game and be kind of not getting the full story with the English version. And it's kind of a problem too, as like a content creator, right? There's somebody that like does YouTube and stuff like that. Like, I've sat here like for hours making videos discussing like theories and stuff like that, and I've had people just come into the comment section that are like, "Oh, actually in the Japanese they say this, that, or the other," and it actually completely changes like the entire discussion I had in this video, and the entire video ends up being goddamn pointless. And that is very fucking frustrating, man, to waste just hours of my life on that shit. It makes it really difficult to like just discuss certain scenes, even when it comes to OG FF7 and stuff sometimes, whenever you almost have to like learn an entire other language and then play the game in that language to really understand everything, all because they just can't simply like translate it accurately. And it's not even like a discrepancy between like, you know, Japanese being like difficult. Like, sometimes they just completely change scenes entirely when they put it in English. And it's honestly very annoying whenever like people in the community can simply like look at what they say in Japanese and English and like give us a better like understanding of what they said in Japanese. Like, and like people are confused, like, why do they say that in English? Because that's not actually what they say. They actually say this. And it's like, why are fans able to translate it better than the people who are making the fucking game? There's really not much of a conclusion to this video. There's not really anything we can do about it. We can sign petitions and things, but it's not really going to change. They've been doing this with FF7 for like, 26 plus years now. But I just wanted to talk about this, kind of discuss it a bit, because it is a little annoying. And I just want to talk to you guys. It's been a little while. But what are some more examples of this stuff? And I don't just mean like errors when it comes to like FF7, like this guy R6 or whatever. Like, what are some more, like when it comes to Remake specifically, like some very egregious examples of like English versus Japanese? Because there's actually more that I've seen that isn't on like that list that we kind of looked at earlier, because I've definitely heard people talk about other scenes as well. Anyways, my dudes, that is the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @davidYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect, we spend it with no shame, we blow that like Coltrane, we in here like Logain, or leave it like Cobain.